Hello and welcome to my game. As you can see, the game has a main menu and level selection. In the game, you press the arrow keys to move. To jump, you hold the up arrow key and charge the jump, then let go. When you collide with an enemy, you go to the last checkpoint and lose 100 score. When you collide with a treat tile, you gain 1 treat, and the tile is replaced with the background tile. For every treat you have, it increases the score by 100. You can press space to shoot, and a bullet will go in the direction you're facing. If the bullet hits an enemy, it will make them turn around if it is a fox, and if it's a bee, it will return back to its spawn. The player only has free ammo. If you collide with one of the checkpoint tiles, it will update the checkpoint location you can go back to, with the location where the checkpoint is. It also puts your ammo back to free. As you can see, the camera follows the player slower than the player moves, but as the player gets further away from where the camera is, it gets faster. The jump charge has a max of 100 charge, and it reaches it here. The fox walks back and forth and turns when it hits a wall. As you can see, the player goes back to the checkpoint. While on a whole tile, you can press the down arrow to hide. While hiding, you can't be hit, and bees won't go to your location, unless they are already going to your location. Bees walk back and forth until the player walks into their range, then they go to the user's location when they start the action. If you collide with the dog, the game ends and you are sent back to the main menu. If your score is bigger than the previous high score, then it will be written into a binary file, and it is displayed next to the level. The game is a platformer, so the player has gravity, and the player will need to not be able to go through certain tiles, as to not fall indefinitely, and not to be able to walk through walls. This is the tile map, and the tiles that are circled are solid. All maps are saved in text files, and when the user selects the level, it loads the map selected by changing the text file that is used. The application tiled was used to make the maps and turn them into text files. The circled tiles are spawners for the enemies. When the level first loads, the scripts check the tile map for these tiles and replaces it with the background needed. Then an enemy is spawned at the location. The bee uses an A-star search algorithm when the location they are going to is worked out. It moves in a 20-tile area back and forth. Once it's done an action, it searches for the player within the 20-tile area. Once it finishes moving to the player's old location, it heads back to the spawn that it started at and finishes its action, allowing it to search again. The collisions that are used for both enemies to the player are circle collisions. Meanwhile, everything else is box collisions. The shooting uses object pooling, and so do all the enemies. There is sound in the game. The sounds that are in the game are jumping, hiding, shooting, getting hit, and eating a treat. There is also music for the game. For the main menu, the menu is controlled by using the up and down arrow to control what's being selected, and space to confirm. You can press escape to go back to the menu and also to go back. There are animations that are in the game for the player. This is done by using a sprite sheet. There are some changes that I made to the game to make it run better. As you can see from this screenshot, the enemy script was using too much processing power, and the root cause of this was that it was calling for the tile map from the tile map script every tick, and checking the entire tile map to check for collision. So the first thing I did was I made it so the tile map was copied to the enemy script at the start of the game. This made the strain slightly less, but not by much. So then I made it so that it only checked when the enemy had entered a new tile, and to only check the tiles that it needs to check, instead of all the tiles. This made a significant improvement. However, I did not know if the first change helped as much. So I made a new branch and reverted the changes for the first change and tested them both, and there was barely any difference. But the one with both changes was slightly better. I then put this on the other scripts like the bullet script and the player script, although the player script did not copy the tile map, as some collisions like treat and hide collisions would be too complicated. This majorly improved the running of the game. However, the game render was using an unreasonable amount of processing power, so I then changed it so the renderer only rendered the tiles on the screen, and this improved it by a lot. Comparing this to what was planned, most of it was done besides the particles and a button that would open up areas, with the second one not being done because it was too complex. Also, the enemies aren't exactly like they were described, as I split the fox into 2 types of enemies to make the game more fun. Besides this, it's exactly as planned, with there being a jump mechanic, a hiding mechanic, and a rage projectiles. There are also treats that increase your score, and checkpoints, just as it's described on the PowerPoint. This is a simplified version of how the code interacts. However, the part that I want to focus on is the keep alive, update, and render functions and their interactions with the player, and what they see. As you can see, the user inputs into the application, then the keep alive function will call on its movements functions in the player's script, depending on the user inputs. Then the update function in the main script will call for the update function in the player script, updating the player's location, and then call to check if the player has moved from where the camera is. And if it has moved from where the camera is, then it moves the camera. Then render calls for the renderer in the player script, sending the camera location over so the player character will be rendered in the right place. This is done this way so the player is not rendered always in the center of the screen,